Hello and welcome to another Blender bite-sized video. In this one I'll be showing you how to create a procedural citrus fruit skin material in Blender 4. First up, let's take a look at the specs. I'm using Blender 4.2. I know Blender 4.5 came out, but I'm a little behind. I'm also using Windows 11, NVIDIA graphics card, Cycles render engine and a custom
Just before I continue with the tutorial, let me remind you that you can grab this material and hundreds more on my Gumroad store, blenderbitesize.gumroad.com.
Okay, so here we are in my custom startup file. I've got a room with lights and a camera. I've also got my main object and some supporting actors here. So we've got the main room here, 3 point lights or 3 spotlights or area lights, the camera, the supporting actors and Suzanne the monkey head. And this is what it looks like from the camera view. Let's switch over to the shading tab and enable viewport render. We'll select Suzanne, assign a new material and give it a name. Next, I'm going to click on each of the objects ending with Suzanne and holding down the Shift key as I do it, then pressing Control L and M to link the material so the same material will be applied to all of the objects. I'm going to start with the principled shader and drop the roughness to 0.4 and the index of refraction to 1.45 and the alpha to 0.9. Then on the subsurface, I'm going to change the method to Christensen-Burley, set the weight at 1, and the scale at 0.125. Now this is probably because I'm using a specific sized object. You may need to adjust this for yours, but you can see the light now starting to penetrate the thinner areas. On specular, I'm going for GGX, and I am setting the IOR level at 0.75. And then for the coat, I'm just setting it at 0.2 at the moment. Roughness is 0 and leaving everything else as it is. For the sheen, I'm going to give the weight a value of 1. And then I'll be controlling some of the other factors here with other nodes in the group. So let's make a start on those. Pressing Shift A brings up the search box and I'm going to search for an RGB node. This will be the overall control for the colour of the citrus fruit skin. I'm then going to grab a layer weight node and this will create some nice shading around the edges as if you're looking at it in 3D. Then I need a mix colour node and I'll duplicate that so that I have 2 on screen. And then I'm going to select those 4 and press Shift P to assign a frame. Then I'll press N to open up the panel on the right and give it a name. So this collection of nodes is going to generate the colouring for the fruit skin. Let's look at how to connect those up now. So the far right mix node I'm going to assign to the base colour in the principled shader. The RGB I'm going to connect up to the A slot in the first mix color node. The facing value from the layer weight is going to go in the factor of the second mix node. And then I'll be connecting the result of the first mix node into the A slot of the second. Then I'm going to assign my starting color. In this case, I'm going to try and work with an orange. You can, of course, get exact hex values from the internet to find the exact color that you want. I'm just going with an approximation at the moment using that RGB slider. Now the first mix node we are going to assign value as the mixing factor or blending mode, and on the second one we're going to go for color burn, and you can see there now how that layer weight adds that darkness to the outside of the objects, giving them a more rounded feel. And that's what's doing it. It's basically the black values within that facing output from the layer weight node. That's all being mixed together in that second mix value together with the orange, and then through into the principled shader where it's assigning all of the other settings that I've got there. Now we'll go over here and press Shift A and search for a Voronoi texture, then a color ramp, and I'll select the Voronoi texture and press Ctrl T to assign a texture coordinate and a mapping node, and make sure the object output from the texture coordinate is selected. We'll connect up the Voronoi to the color ramp, and the color ramp will connect up to the B slot of that mix node in that color selection. Now you can already see it's assigned some mottling to the material, but I'm going to again apply a frame, and this is called speckle pattern. This is going to give us the little dark spots that go across the fruit surface, but we're not quite there yet. On the mapping node, we'll set the scale at 0.25 to reduce the overall scale. On the Voronoi texture, the feature output is smooth F1 with a scale of 500, detail of 0, roughness of 0, lacunarity of 0, and smooth of 1 and randomness of 1. Then we're going to set the color ramp to constant and position the white at position 0.2. And if I zoom in, you can see that speckling going on there. You can of course fine tune this according to the scale of your object. I'm going with very fine speckling at this point. Now I actually wanted the texture coordinate node to sit outside that group, so I deleted it and then I searched for a new one and applied it and connected it up, because I want that to drive another mapping node for another set of nodes, which I'm going to search for now. We'll start with a color ramp, followed by a bump node, and then what I'll do next is connect the distance from the Voronoi texture to the color ramp, and then the color output from the color ramp into the height socket of the bump node. And then I will connect the bump node up to another bump node, this time into the normal socket. And then that I will connect up to the normal of the principled shader, and also the normal of the coat. Now it's starting to look a bit strange. Don't worry, we've got more to do. I'll change the interpolation mode on the color ramp to ease. Then I'm going to change that black value to like a mid-grey. So I originally went with 0.6, but here I'm going with 0.5. The strength on the first bump node I'm putting at 0.1 and the distance at 0.05. So we can see there, that bump is being driven by the original Voronoi texture, which is being crunched by the color ramp. Then I'm going to grab a mapping node, a noise texture, and I'll connect that up to the texture coordinate. Then I'm going to take this factor and drag it into the height socket of the second bump node. I'm also going to take that into the roughness of the sheen. Now on the noise texture, we're going to set the scale at 60, detail at 5, roughness at 0.4, and we'll put the distortion at 0.15. For the color ramp and the bump node, I'm going to give those a frame and call them speckle bump. As long as I can spell. And then for the mapping node and the noise texture, again a frame, and call this main texture. So the main texture is kind of the bumpiness that you would feel with your fingertips. The speckle bump is slightly finer, and it relies on that speckle pattern that we created. Now for the second bump node, we're going to invert that, set the strength at 0.25 and the distance at 0.15, and that's getting closer to what we want. I'm going to take the value from the first mix color node and plug it in the tint for the specular and for the sheen. As you can see, without doing that, we had kind of a fine white mist over it, which looked a bit strange. So you can see this material, because of that layer weight node, we're getting the darker tones in the recesses, which you would kind of find looking at a piece of fruit. So we can fine tune this colour for the overall thing here. So we can go from limes to lemons to oranges to grapefruits and anything in between that you can imagine, really. And other than the scale, that's really all that you need to play with on this one. So once you've got it set up, it's very, very easy to adjust. Okay, let's take a look at some of the render settings, because I know some of you tend to question why yours aren't working out the same. I'm using the Cycles render engine. I've got on the render 0.1 and various other settings that you saw. If you need to make note of these or copy them over, feel free to pause the video and just work your way down. But these are all the settings that I've got when it comes to rendering. The only other thing that I've got going on is in the compositor. So let's take a look at that. I've got the denoise node, which has these inputs, and I've also got the despeckle node in action. To make sure that you have those nodes available for the denoise node, make sure you've got denoising enabled and denoising data selected in the View Layer tab. Once you've got all that set up, you can send your image to render. And it should be a lot quicker than trying to do it other ways. I'm using tiling here, which is why it looks like it's a 1990s loading screen. And of course the compositor tends to double the speed of the render, but 23 seconds and we've got a very respectable looking citrus fruit skin. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this one. Please remember to give the video a thumbs up before you leave, and of course subscribe and hit the bell icon for notifications of future videos. In the meantime, thanks very much for watching.